The acrid smell of burnt garlic hit Emma Chen's nostrils the moment she stepped through the apartment door. She'd been running late. Her shift at Riverside Culinary Institute had gone over by 2 hours because Professor Marchand insisted on perfecting her bechamel technique. Again, her feet ached in her non-slip kitchen clogs, and all she wanted was to collapse on the couch with leftover pad thai and maybe watch one episode of that cooking competition show she'd been binge-watching. But something felt wrong. The apartment was too quiet, yet not empty. There was a presence, a tension in the air that made her skin prickle. Emma set her backpack down slowly, her culinary knife kit making a soft thud against the hardwood floor. "Marcus?" she called out, her voice tentative. Her fiancé should have been at his restaurant. Luminescence, the upscale fusion place downtown that had been his dream for the past 3 years. He'd poured everything into it, their savings, his parents' investment, even the small inheritance from his grandmother. The grand opening was in 2 weeks, and he'd been practically living at the restaurant, perfecting every detail. No response. But she heard something, a muffled sound from the bedroom. A laugh, a woman's laugh. Emma's heart began to pound. She knew that laugh. It was bright and musical, the kind that made everyone in a room turn and smile. It was the laugh of her best friend since freshman year of college, the person who'd been her maid of honor at the engagement party just 3 months ago. It was Sarah's laugh. Her legs moved on autopilot, carrying her down the hallway toward the bedroom. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see them. Marcus, his shirt unbuttoned, his hair disheveled in a way that was unmistakable, and Sarah wearing Emma's favorite silk robe, the one Marcus had given her for their anniversary. The world tilted. Emma gripped the doorframe, her knuckles white. For a moment she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what her eyes were showing her. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real, but it was. Marcus saw her first. His face went pale, then red, cycling through emotions faster than Emma could track. "Emma, God, Emma, this isn't, don't." The word came out flat dead. Emma was surprised by her own voice. She'd expected to scream, to cry, to break down. Instead, she felt nothing, a vast empty nothing that swallowed everything else. Sarah sat up, clutching the robe closed. Please, let me explain. How long?" Emma heard herself ask. Silence. How long? Marcus ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing. Now it just looked pathetic. 6 months, 6 months, half a year. While she'd been planning their wedding, choosing flowers and cake flavors, he'd been sleeping with her best friend. While she'd been supporting his dream, working double shifts to help cover their rent so he could focus on the restaurant, he'd been betraying her in the most fundamental way possible. "Get out," Emma said quietly. "Both of you. Get out of my apartment." "Emma, please, we need to talk about this," Marcus started. "This is my apartment. My name on the lease. Get out." Something in her tone must have convinced them she meant it. Marcus grabbed his clothes. Sarah gathered her things, and within 10 minutes they were gone. Emma stood in the middle of her living room, surrounded by the detritus of a life that no longer existed. Engagement photos on the wall, Marcus's cooking magazines on the coffee table, Sarah's favorite coffee mug in the sink. Then finally she cried. The next morning, Emma woke up with swollen eyes and a pounding headache. Her phone was full of messages, from Marcus, from Sarah, from mutual friends who'd somehow already heard the news. She deleted them all without reading, but one message caught her attention. It was from an unknown number. "Ms. Chen, this is David Park from Luminescence. I'm the sous chef at your fiancé's restaurant. I heard about what happened. I'm sorry. I'm also quitting. If you want to know why, meet me at Riverside Cafe at 10 a.m. There's something you should know about the restaurant." Emma stared at the message. David Park. She'd met him once, briefly, at a pre-opening event Marcus had dragged her to. He'd been quiet, intense, with sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything. Marcus had mentioned him a few times, always with a slight edge to his voice, as if David's competence was somehow threatening. She should ignore the message. She should focus on putting her life back together, on figuring out how to move forward. But curiosity, and maybe a desire for answers, made her type back, "I'll be there." Riverside Cafe was a small, cozy place near the Culinary Institute, popular with students and instructors alike. Emma arrived early, ordering a black coffee she didn't really want and sitting at a corner table where she could see the door. David arrived exactly at 10. He was taller than she remembered, with dark hair and an athletic build that suggested he spent time doing something other than standing in a kitchen. He wore jeans and a simple black t-shirt, and he moved with the kind of careful precision that marked someone who'd spent years in professional kitchens, where every movement mattered. "Thanks for coming," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Up close, his eyes were even more striking, dark and intelligent, with a directness that was almost unsettling. "Your message said there's something I should know about the restaurant," Emma said, skipping pleasantries. She didn't have the energy for small talk. David nodded. He pulled out his phone and opened a folder of documents. "I've been at Luminescence for 8 months. I was brought on as sous chef, with the understanding that I'd eventually move up to head chef when Marcus transitioned to full-time management. But about 3 months ago, I started noticing discrepancies." He slid the phone across to her. Emma looked at the screen. It showed spreadsheets, invoices, bank statements. "Marcus has been embezzling from the restaurant," David said bluntly. "He's been skimming money from the investor accounts, falsifying vendor invoices and pocketing the difference. I estimate he's taken somewhere around $200,000. Emma felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "200,000? The investors don't know yet. I only figured it out because I was reviewing the books for inventory orders and noticed the numbers didn't add up. I've been documenting everything, but I wasn't sure what to do with it. Then I heard about what happened with you. Why are you telling me this?" David leaned back, his expression serious. "Because some of that money is yours. Marcus told everyone he was self-funding part of the restaurant. I'm guessing that self-funding actually meant using your joint savings and anything else he could access." Emma's hands were shaking. She set down her coffee cup before she could spill it. "What happens now?" "That depends. I've already submitted my resignation. I'm not going to be part of a fraudulent operation. The investors will figure it out eventually, probably when the restaurant opens and the numbers don't match the projections. Marcus will face legal consequences. But if you want to do something about it now, you could go to the investors directly, or to the police." Emma looked at the documents again. Her mind was racing. Marcus hadn't just betrayed her personally. He'd been stealing, lying, building his dream on a foundation of fraud. And she'd been so blind, so trusting that she'd never questioned anything. "There's something else," David said quietly. "The restaurant itself, the concept, the menu, the whole vision, it's actually brilliant. Marcus might be a terrible person, but he had a good idea. It's just that he's been executing it in the worst possible way. The investors, the staff, the vendors, everyone deserves better." An idea began to form in Emma's mind. It was crazy, probably impossible, but it sparked something in her that had been dead since yesterday. What if we saved it? David blinked. "What?" "The restaurant. What if we exposed Marcus, got him removed, and saved Luminescence? You said the concept is good. You're a sous chef, you know the operations. I'm finishing my degree at Riverside. I know the technical side. What if we pitch the investors on keeping the restaurant open, but with new management?" David paused, considering. "That's actually not as crazy as it sounds. The investors have already sunk money into this. They'd lose everything if the restaurant fails. If we could present them with a viable alternative, would you be interested?" Emma asked. "In running the kitchen?" David studied her for a long moment. "You don't even know me. I know you're honest enough to quit rather than be part of fraud. I know you're competent enough to spot financial irregularities that no one else noticed. And I know you care about the restaurant enough to warn me. That's more than I knew about my fiancé, apparently." A small smile tugged at the corner of David's mouth. "Fair point. Okay, let's say I'm interested. What's your angle?" "Why would you want to save your ex-fiancé's restaurant?" Emma thought about it. Why did she want this? Revenge, justice? Or was it something else? A desire to prove that she wasn't just a victim, that she could take the worst thing that had ever happened to her and turn it into something positive. "Because he doesn't deserve to win," she said finally. "Because everyone who invested in this, who believed in it, deserves a chance. And because I'm tired of being the person things happen to, I want to be the person who makes things happen." David extended his hand across the table. "Then let's make things happen." The next week was a whirlwind. David and Emma met every day, sometimes for hours, building their case. David provided all his documentation of Marcus's fraud. Emma reached out to the primary investor, a successful restaurateur named Helen Jang who'd believed in Marcus's vision, and requested an emergency meeting. Helen agreed, but only if Emma could present something concrete. I've heard rumors, Helen said over the phone, her voice crisp and businesslike. If you're going to make accusations, you'd better have proof. And if you're going to propose an alternative, you'd better have a solid plan. Emma and David worked around the clock. Emma pulled all-nighters, something she hadn't done since her freshman year finals. She dug into her class notes, her textbooks, everything she'd learned about restaurant management and culinary operations. David contributed his industry experience, his knowledge of staffing, inventory, and kitchen operations. They created a full business plan, revised financial projections, a new management structure, a refined menu that built on Marcus's original concept, but incorporated David's expertise and Emma's classical training. They outlined exactly how they'd discovered the fraud, how much money was missing, and how they could still make the restaurant profitable if they moved quickly. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday afternoon at Helen's office downtown. Emma dressed carefully, professional but not stuffy, confident but not arrogant. David wore a suit that looked slightly uncomfortable on him, as if he wasn't used to wearing anything other than chef's whites. Helen's office was sleek and modern, all glass and steel. The investor herself was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun and sharp assessing eyes. Two other investors were there as well, Michael Torres, who owned several successful food trucks, and Jennifer Kim, a venture capitalist who specialized in hospitality. You have 30 minutes, Helen said without preamble. Convince me. Emma took a deep breath and began. She presented the evidence of fraud methodically, walking through each discrepancy, each falsified invoice. David backed her up with technical details, showing exactly how Marcus had manipulated the accounting. The investors' faces grew progressively darker as the presentation continued. Michael swore under his breath. Jennifer's jaw tightened. Then Emma shifted to the second part of the presentation, the proposal to save the restaurant. She outlined their plan, their qualifications, their vision. David talked about the kitchen operations, the menu modifications, the staff they'd need. Emma covered the financial projections, the marketing strategy, the timeline for opening. When they finished, there was silence. Helen leaned back in her chair, steepling her fingers. You're asking us to fire Marcus, install you as general manager, and make David here head chef. You're both in your 20s. Emma, you haven't even finished culinary school. David, you've never been a head chef before. Why should we trust you? Emma had prepared for this question. Because we have nothing to lose and everything to prove. Because we care about this restaurant succeeding, not about our egos. Because we're honest, and after what Marcus did, you need people you can trust. And because if you don't try this, you'll lose everything you've already invested. We're offering you a chance to salvage this. She's right, David added. Look, I know I'm young for a head chef position, but I've worked in Michelin-starred kitchens. I've trained under some of the best chefs in the country. I know what I'm doing. And Emma, she's top of her class at Riverside. Her instructors rave about her. We're not the safest choice, but we might be the best one you have right now. Helen exchanged glances with the other investors. Give us a moment, she said. Emma and David stepped out into the hallway. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Did we do enough? She whispered. I don't know, David admitted, but we gave it our best shot. 10 minutes later, Helen called them back in. Her expression was unreadable. We've made a decision. We're going to pursue legal action against Marcus immediately. We're also going to give you a chance, but with conditions. Emma felt a surge of hope. What conditions? You'll have 3 months to get the restaurant open and profitable. We'll provide the remaining funding, but we'll also be watching every penny. You'll report to us weekly. If at any point we feel things aren't working, we reserve the right to bring in different management. And Emma, you'll finish your degree. Classes during the day, restaurant at night. Non-negotiable. I can do that, Emma said immediately. David, you'll be head chef. But we're also bringing in a consultant, someone with experience opening restaurants, to advise you both for the first month. You'll listen to them. Understood? Understood, David said. Helen stood, extending her hand. Then welcome to Luminescence. Don't make us regret this. The next 2 months were the hardest of Emma's life. She was running on 4 hours of sleep a night, juggling classes, restaurant prep, and dealing with the legal fallout from Marcus's fraud. Marcus himself had disappeared. Rumor had it he'd fled to his parents' place in another state, trying to avoid the criminal charges that were being filed. Sarah had tried to reach out multiple times. Emma ignored every attempt. She didn't have time for that drama, and honestly, she didn't care anymore. Sarah and Marcus deserved each other. The restaurant itself was chaos. Half the staff Marcus had hired quit when they learned about the fraud. The vendors were suspicious, demanding payment up front until Emma and David could prove the restaurant was under new legitimate management. The space itself needed work. Marcus had cut corners on renovations and several things weren't up to code. But slowly, piece by piece, they built something real. David proved to be a brilliant chef, creative, technically skilled, and able to inspire loyalty in the kitchen staff they brought on. He had a gift for taking Emma's classical training and fusing it with modern techniques, creating dishes that were both familiar and surprising. Emma discovered she had a talent for the business side of restaurants. She was good at managing people, at solving problems, at juggling the 1,000 details that went into running a successful establishment. Her professors at Riverside were supportive, letting her do some of her coursework based on her real-world experience at Luminescence. They worked side by side, often 16-hour days. David in the kitchen, Emma in the office and front of house. They developed a rhythm, an unspoken understanding. When Emma was stressed, David would appear with a perfectly plated dish. Taste this? Tell me what you think. When David was frustrated with a recipe that wasn't working, Emma would sit with him, talking through the problem until they found a solution. There were moments of connection that surprised Emma. Late nights when they were the last ones in the restaurant, reviewing the day's progress over leftover food. David telling stories about his childhood in San Francisco, growing up in his grandmother's Korean restaurant, learning to cook before he could read. Emma sharing her own history, her parents' disappointment when she chose culinary school over law school, her determination to prove she could make it in this brutal industry. Why cooking? David asked one night, when they were sitting in the empty dining room at 2 a.m. reviewing menu designs. Emma thought about it. Because it's one of the few things that make sense to me. You follow the recipe, you use the right techniques, and you create something beautiful, something that makes people happy. It's concrete, real, unlike everything else in life. David smiled. That's a very Emma answer. Practical and philosophical at the same time. What about you? My grandmother, he said simply. She could take the simplest ingredients and make them taste like magic. I wanted to understand how she did that. Turns out it wasn't magic, it was skill and practice and love. But it felt like magic. Emma looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something had shifted. David wasn't just her business partner anymore. He was becoming something else. A friend, certainly, but maybe more than that. She pushed the thought away. She couldn't afford distractions. Not now. The grand opening of Luminescence, the real opening, not Marcus's planned disaster, was scheduled for a Friday night in early October. Emma and David had invited food critics, local influencers, the investors, and a carefully curated list of potential regular customers. Emma stood in the dining room an hour before doors opened, surveying their work. The space was beautiful. Warm lighting, elegant table settings, an open kitchen where guests could watch David and his team work. The menu was a perfect blend of accessible and adventurous. Familiar dishes elevated with unexpected techniques and flavors. David emerged from the kitchen, looking nervous for the first time since Emma had met him. We're ready, he said. I think. We're ready, Emma confirmed. She straightened his chef's coat, a gesture that felt oddly intimate. You've got this. We've got this. He caught her hand, holding it for a moment. Whatever happens tonight, I want you to know. This has been the craziest, most intense, most rewarding experience of my life. Thank you for taking a chance on me. Thank you for taking a chance on me, Emma replied. I couldn't have done this without you. For a moment, they just stood there, hands clasped, looking at each other. Then David leaned in, and Emma found herself leaning in too, and, Emma! One of the servers burst into the dining room. The first guests are arriving. The moment broke. David pulled back, looking flustered. Right, okay, I'll be in the kitchen. He disappeared, and Emma took a deep breath, smoothing her dress. She could process whatever had just almost happened later. Right now, she had a restaurant to open. The night was a blur. Guests arrived, were seated, ordered. The kitchen hummed with controlled chaos. Emma moved through the dining room, greeting guests, managing the flow, handling the inevitable small crises that arose. A wrong order, a delayed dish, a guest with dietary restrictions that hadn't been properly communicated, but mostly things went right. The food was spectacular. Emma could see it in the guests' faces as they took their first bites. The service was smooth. The atmosphere was perfect. Helen Zhang arrived halfway through service with the other investors. Emma seated them at the best table and watched nervously as they ordered, ate, and evaluated. Helen's face remained neutral throughout the meal, giving nothing away. Finally, as the dining room began to empty and the last guest trickled out, Helen approached Emma. "Walk with me," she said. They stepped outside into the cool October air. Emma's heart was pounding. This was it, the moment of judgment. That, Helen said, was one of the best meals I've had in years. The food was extraordinary. The service was impeccable. The atmosphere was perfect. You and David have done something remarkable here. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. That means everything. Don't thank me yet. You still have work to do. This was one night. You need to maintain this level of quality consistently. You need to build a reputation, a customer base. You need to prove this wasn't a fluke. We will, Emma said firmly. Helen smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. I believe you. You know what impressed me most? Not the food, though, that was impressive. It was watching you and David work together. You have something special. A partnership built on mutual respect and complementary skills. That's rarer than you might think in this industry. After Helen left, Emma went back inside. The dining room was empty now. Chairs up on tables, staff cleaning and closing down. She found David in the kitchen supervising the final cleanup. Helen loved it, she told him. David's face broke into a huge grin. Yeah? Yeah. We did it, David. We actually did it. He pulled her into a hug, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. Emma laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. When he set her down, they were standing very close, his hands still on her waist. Emma, he said quietly. Earlier, before service, I was going to... I know, she interrupted. I was going to let you. Is that something you'd still be interested in? Emma thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the hard work, the triumph. She thought about how David had been there through all of it. Steady and supportive and real. She thought about how she felt when she was with him. Challenged, respected, seen. Yes, she said. But let's do this right. Let's take it slow. We're business partners, and that has to come first. But I'd like to see where this goes. David smiled, that rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Slow works for me. We've got time. He leaned in and kissed her, soft, sweet, full of promise. When they pulled apart, Emma was smiling too. Epilogue. 6 months later, Luminescence was thriving. They'd been featured in 3 major food magazines, earned a glowing review from the city's toughest critic, and had a waiting list for reservations that stretched weeks in advance. Emma had graduated from Riverside at the top of her class. David had been nominated for a Rising Star Chef Award. They'd also been dating for 4 months, taking things slow like they'd promised. It was different from what Emma had with Marcus, built on honesty, mutual respect, and a genuine partnership. They challenged each other, supported each other, and most importantly, they trusted each other. Marcus had been charged with fraud and embezzlement. Last Emma had heard, he was facing serious jail time. Sarah had tried to apologize multiple times, but Emma had finally told her, kindly but firmly, that she couldn't forgive what had happened. Some betrayals were too deep. But Emma had also learned something important. She didn't need forgiveness or closure from them. She'd built something new, something better. From the ashes of that betrayal, she'd discovered strength she didn't know she had. She'd found a partner in business and in life who saw her, really saw her, and valued what he saw. One evening after service, Emma and David stood in the empty dining room, reviewing plans for expanding the menu. You know, David said, when I sent you that text 6 months ago, I had no idea where it would lead. Neither did I, Emma admitted. I thought my life was over. Turns out it was just beginning. Any regrets? Emma thought about it seriously. Not one. Well, maybe one. I regret wasting 3 years with someone who didn't deserve me. But everything else? The restaurant, the work, us? No regrets at all. David pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Good, because I have plans for us. Big plans. Oh yeah? Like what? Like opening a second location. Like getting married someday. Like building an empire together. You know, small stuff, Emma laughed. An empire, huh? That's ambitious. You're the one who taught me to dream big. Besides, we've already proven we can turn disaster into success. Imagine what we can do when we're actually starting from a good place. Emma looked around the restaurant. Their restaurant, built from betrayal and hard work and determination. She thought about everything they'd overcome, everything they'd achieved. And she thought about the future stretching out before them, full of possibility. Okay, she said. Let's build an empire together, and they did.